She ended up being the script girl for the Three Stooges, who she said were just as funny in real life as they were on the screen.
Hopefully they don't hit people over the head.
No, it was also fun. In fact, they said she was very good with them, worked with them, and played along. And when they had cutbacks and were going to fire her, they refused to work unless they had her on the set. So they gave her her job back because of it. My family got involved in a lot of very famous Hollywood films. One of the family friends we had was Mickey Rooney, who, by the way, drinks like a fish. And unfortunately, most of my family did as well, being Irish. And there were 5 members of my family actually worked on The Wizard of Oz. So wherever we see that movie, it's kind of like a family, so it's a tradition. My dad did a lot of the paintings and decorating on the Munchkin Village. And most people don't realize while they were taping, filming that classic film, Mickey Rooney was on the set because he was having a hot, heavy romance with Judy Garland at the time. In fact, he even offered to be a Munchkin for them. But they refused because they'd have to pay him a huge amount of money. You know what the Munchkins got paid? $50 a week.
Oh.
$50 a week. Toto the dog got 120. So the dog got more than they did. But a lot of interesting stories. So I came about learning about Hollywood from the dinner table and going over to my grandmother and grandpa's house. So I've always been interested in old Hollywood and watching some of the films that my father and grandfather talked about. He, by the way, was even in a few movies as an extra, which is, I've been in a few movies as an extra myself, so I continue the family tradition. But I got involved in silent film in college. I took a number of classes in it, and so I feel pretty well qualified to teach about that subject. But being a lifelong Venturan, Ventura County resident, it was only natural that I actually focused in on films made right here. And a lot of iconic films were made in this area, as well as in the past, as well as today. Hollywood is just down the road a piece. And so when they need an area to film, they actually come up here. Of course, what do they film today? Mostly commercials. You know how many times, have you ever watched a car commercial? What you're watching is Thousand Oaks or Point Magoo Rock. They use that so often, especially Kia and some of these commercials. Even Ventura's Pier is used in car commercials a great deal to this day. So they still continue to make movies, but not as many movies are made here in Hollywood today. If you watch movies or even TV shows, you'll notice most of them are now made in Canada. And I really like that show, Psych. Supposedly, if you ever watch it, it was made in Santa Barbara, which is really Toronto, Canada. Which looks nothing at all like Santa Barbara, with the tall pine trees and all. But they do that because of the problem with monies and wages. The unions got so powerful in Hollywood, and with the union help in the state of California, they made it so expensive. Now they all wanted to get paid for it. Great, right? Unfortunately, the people who now got good wages aren't working because all the work's in Canada. Well, they don't have to pay the union dues. So it's kind of, they cut their own throat. By the way, what do a lot of them do? They go to Canada and work and take a cut in pay, but they get some money as opposed to not working and not getting it.
Isn't the cost of living lower there also?
The cost of living is Canada is still pretty high, but not that bad. It's a whole different set of worms in Canada. They have different laws too that are pretty odd and strange. But we're here to not talk about Hollywood today, because I do believe Hollywood will come back. I don't think it is. Now, a lot of people, I just recently had relatives come from Indianapolis. They've never been to California. And of course, what did they want to see? Hollywood. So I took them there, and they were, of course, incredibly disappointed. Because in truth, it's a really scummy town. They said, "Joe, where's the glamour?" Well, first, it never was glamorous. It was always scummy. So even if you went back 100 years, or well, maybe not 100, but 75 years, it still was a beautiful place right next door to a little down and out flop house. So it's always kind of a mixed up place. And it still is like that even to this day. Now, Hollywood began because of, again, what's killing it, the taxes. Okay, who invented the film camera?
Edison.
Edison did in America, but the Lumiere brothers did in France. So there were two competitive systems beginning. They made short little films, mostly around New York State. And they did a lot of innovative stuff in those early years. Well, finally, the two feuding systems, Edison and others, got together and said, wait a minute, these independent people are cutting our throats. So they formed a communion, and they decided to tax all films, which completely wiped out, or would have wiped out, the independent filmmakers. So a lot of them took their cameras across the country to California. Why? The good weather? Yeah, partly. Also, the nearness to the Mexican border. That's so if the police came to arrest them, they could flee to Mexico and escape justice. Matter of fact, the first person to really make a movie in Hollywood was Cecil B. DeMille. In fact, they should make a statue to that man. He really made Hollywood. He got off the train to make a movie called The Squaw Man. And he was supposed to make it in Phoenix, but when he got to Phoenix, it was still raining. So he kept on the train and ended up in LA. He got off the train and said, where can I rent a barn to make a movie? And this old farmer was at the train station and said, I'll rent you half my barn. I'm over in Hollywood. So he got on the wagon and went over there, and he made this little movie called The Squaw Man. Great hit for him and the Lasky Players, who later became Paramount Studios, which is still in Hollywood. So they began that tradition. And he continued, by the way, he remade The Squaw Man 3 times as another silent film and as a talking film. And it's a very hoary old melodrama. What is it about? This betrayed man comes out west, you know, and with a partner, they buy a big ranch in the west. His bad, evil partner gets him and shoots him, thinks he kills him. And he's dying on the ground, and this Native American woman drags him to her teepee and nurses him back to health. Of course, he falls in love with her because, well, she saved his life, quite literally, and marries him, becoming the Squaw Man. Of course, he had a fiancée back in Boston who didn't know about this new development, and he finally gets back, gets his health back, and finds out who actually shot him, and his fiancée comes and learns he's married to this Native American woman who is, by the way, a really wonderful person. At the very end, the good guy and the bad guy have a shootout, right? So what's going on after all? And the bad guy gets the drop on the good guy, and this Native American wife, what does she do? Throws herself in front of the gun, and she takes it. And of course, she saves her husband, and while she's dying, you know, and oh, by the way, the good guy shoots the bad guy at that point. But then the lady dying, she calls the fiancé to come over to her, and she comes over, you know, and then she takes her hand and gives it to the hand of her husband. And Well, it did. That's the movie. That made Hollywood. Hollywood became synonymous with that. Now, this you got to remember is silent Hollywood, not modern Hollywood. That meant that, like today, making movies was very simple. All you needed is a camera and some film and a crank, essentially. There were hand crank films. So consequently, it was easy to go on location. And they really loved it too. Not that the people who were in the pictures actually loved it. Because what they do is they'd see anything, like there's a fire, they would get their camera crew and their actors, run to the fire. Here's a fireman trying to put out a house fire, and they were making a movie, shooting the fireman in the flame. Then they go to the actors. Here is a baby, a little doll, run inside the flames and come out, so the fireman can rescue. But here the firemen are trying to fight the fire. In Hollywood, people are running in, making a movie, the actresses had to be pretty daring a lot. They had to go inside and inhale smoke. And then, of course, he had to rescue themselves, all for the glory of the film industry. Literally, they were cranking out these movies. But as movies progressed, they got bigger and bigger and grander and grander. Why? They discovered that aside of making a few dollars here and there, they could make a lot of dollars. A big movie could really bring in the cash. And the first big movie, sadly enough, was The Birth of a Nation by D.W. Griffith, which is really two movies. Now, if you see the first part, by the way, that's the only part I actually screened for the kids, it's all about the Civil War. And the second part is about the rise of the Ku Klux Klan, which I don't show that part. But it was an epic film for its day. Of course, after that, poor D.W. Griffith got tarred with the racist label. But he was a racist. I mean, he was so racist, he didn't know he was a racist. Then he spent the rest of his career trying to erase that and made movies about prejudice against Chinese Americans, against unwed mothers and others. He did a lot of other things which is forgotten in the inundation of the movie, The Birth of a Nation. But that film, which he paid for out of his own pocket, made him an estimated $27 million, which he put in his own pocket, almost no taxes on that. That would be worth billions of our money. When that happened, New York perked up his ears. Aha, you can make money, big money on Hollywood. And they got involved. That's when the studios began to make films. And remarkably, several the blockbuster films have been made right in here in Ventura County over the years. Now, the one that is perhaps best known is perhaps was made by Douglas Fairbanks in what is today Lake Sherwood. There was a lake there long ago, had oak trees around it. What was it called? Lake Poyergas, which means fleas. Flea lake. Of course, there was a thing we don't talk about much, and that's in 1918, a huge flu epidemic, which people thought would millions died worldwide. 60 million, it's estimated. Here in the United States, 450,000 Americans died of the flu in 1 month. Schools closed, movie houses closed. The flu was airborne. One cough and you could be infected. So everyone, Hollywood almost died. But Douglas Fairbanks was in Europe and got the idea to make a movie about Robin Hood. And he came back in the midst of this and hired all these people for 1/4 of their wages. And he went to Thousand Oaks and rented the lake, renamed it, and built a little castle set there and filmed this big epic movie where King Richard the Lionheart is played by Wallace Berry, of all people. And he had this beautiful leading lady. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know, there has, he was married to Mary Pickford, very much in love. She refused to let him kiss his leading lady at the end. So you know what they did? she took on the role of Maid Marian for the last shot of the movie, and had to put her on a box. She was a short woman in a big dress, and it's a long shot. He runs up to her thinking she's been killed by the bad guy, but she hasn't. And he runs up and gives her this big passionate kiss. And of course, everyone knows the story and watched it for that. He went all over the nation opening the show Robin Hood. And he was in New York. Yeah, he was kind of a funny guy in his own way. He had his costume on, his bow and arrow. They were taking pictures for the interview for the New York newspapers. They were going to screen it that night. And as a joke, he had his bow and arrow, and he shot it out the window. He didn't know the arrow flew and went into the window of a regular guy who was leaning over, and it shot him in the butt. So it was kind of weird. Here is a guy in the middle of New York City. He's leaning over, and an arrow comes through the window and shoots him. So he immediately goes to the hospital. He says he goes sue Fairbanks. Fairbanks did what Hollywood has always done. Came to his hospital room, apologized profusely with a big suitcase full of cash, and he said, how about we just forget that little unpleasantness, all your hospital bills will be paid, here's some free tickets to my movie, and a big suitcase full of money. That always works, and he took the money. And the movie was an incredible success. In fact, it was so successful, it made millions of dollars. And a lot of the real estate people actually took the old Lake Sherwood, the old Flea Lake, and turned it into a housing development. Also at this time is most amazing Hollywood personality. We owe him a debt too. And there are statues of this fellow. His name was Rudolph Valentino, an Italian who went to Paris, was kind of a gigolo dancer there, and then he knew that World War I was coming, so it was a good idea to go to New York, which he did. He came to New York and couldn't find work. He ended up being a groundsman at Central Park. He was a janitor, but he was a good dancer. So he got a job working at a kind of a place where rich elderly women could dance with handsome young men. And he found one wealthy woman, and she started to sort of keep him. Unfortunately, her husband didn't like this arrangement, and they got into a big fight. She threw a gun out and shot him. Her husband got rid of him, claimed that he was going to kill her, and we don't know what the real story is, but she named Rudolph Valentino as the third part of their little triangle, which meant for Rudy, what's the best thing to do? Get out of town. So he got a job at an acting company that was going to the West. He did a few plays, the show folded. He's in San Francisco. He's now out of work. He's drinking at a bar, and the guy said, hey, they're making movies in Hollywood. Why don't you go down there and get a movie career? So we went down there because he just needed the money. But he was dark. And in those days, everything was stereotyped. And if you are a dark, Italian-looking fellow, they immediately made you a gangster. I guess they still do that, don't they? Nero. Anyway, so they did that. So he was always kind of a bad guy. And he wanted to play a lead. And there was this rather unattractive lady named Judy Mathis who wrote screenplays. Remarkably, silent Hollywood was very open, and a lot of women achieved high rank in early Hollywood. So she said they had a little romance going on here, and she suggested he star in this movie they were making. After World War I, all these people came home blind and dead and, well, maimed from the war. A big anti-war feeling hit the United States. We said, okay, we went to Europe, bailed out their bacon, and this is all we got for it. There were really no war. They were really against war. They made this movie called The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. And it's about anti-war, about two families, one German, one French, and how they fight. And at the very end, the two good friends meet on the battlefield, and they kill each other, and they see this guy in the former. Anyway, Julio, one of the minor characters in Argentina. He's a Argentine cowboy, a gaucho, and he has this dance with one of the girls. Now, they wanted someone who could do a tango. Valentino could. And he did the tango and stole the movie from everyone else. That made him a star. Then they started to put him in other movies. Unfortunately, he had a bad habit of picking the wrong women to be his wife. First woman he married was a lesbian. Well, I guess she thought marrying him might change. Who knows? Valentino couldn't do it. He could, right? But on their wedding night, she locked him out. He never divorced her, though. He did divorce her, but he never stopped being in love with her. He married another lady, a costume designer from the Midwest, who'd taken on the name of Natasha Rambova. And he married her, and she decided to become his personal manager. Went to the sets of his movies, bossed the directors around, designed the costumes for him. She liked being his manager a lot more than being his wife. Well, anyway, it got so bad that the studios who liked Valentino hated her. They banned her from the set. They did everything. Then Metro decided to punish Valentino. So you know what they did? It's what they do. Even today, they rent their stars out to a low-budget B-picture film and another company. So they rented him out to Paramount, making a sanitized version of this really sexy novel called The Sheik. The Sheik. And so he gets stuck in that role. And now Natasha is still involved. In fact, they decided it's a low-budget film. This is not a good movie, even for its day. This was considered low budget. So it had a short budget thing. Remarkably, it had a lot of great people in it. Adolf Menju, who would have a great career, so in talking films, was in it, had a good role. Valentino, of course, as well as, remarkably, Loretta Young. She played a child. All these people. Now, rather than film it in, well, it was supposed to be set in Morocco, we're not going to do that. They decided to film it in Oxnard. This doesn't look like Morocco, right? They did it at the beach at Hollywood by the Sea. They had sand dunes. And so it was cheaper to go up here than go out to like Yuma or the real deserts they could actually use. They came up here, they hired a bunch of local farmers and cowboys to put on burnouses, and play the Arabs in this feature. Now, there was a lagoon over there. Now it's gone, but there was a saltwater lagoon. They decided to change that into an oasis. So they had made 100 papier-mâché palm trees, all out of papier-mâché, and had them stuck around the saltwater lagoon and some tents, and that was the oasis. Now, the film is about this handsome, this young, impetuous English woman played by Agnes Ayres, how she's in Morocco and wants to see the real country and goes out all by herself, even though she shouldn't, was warned not to, and it is, of course, she had mocked this once prince played by Valentino. And he catches her in the desert, grabs her, and takes her to his tent. And then the famous line is this. She looks at him and says, "What do you want with me?" And what does he answer? "Are you not woman enough to know?" Then he takes her inside, and the tent flap closes. The next we see, our poor Agnes Ayres is now dressed like an Arab woman, being very subservient to Valentino. And they have a love, he falls in love with her, and they have to, but it did something that no other movie had touched. Sex. When his nostrils flared when he looked down, and every woman in America swooned. She wanted to be Agnes Ayres in his arms, taken away by force against her will or morality to take up the life of his woman. So anyway, it made, what happened? Women went over and over and over again to see the movie. Did they make money on it? We don't know how much they made. They owned up to $19 million for a low-budget film that would have been lucky to pull in one. But so they made by the way, we don't know that. They re-released it over and over. Now say you want to screen the Sheik today. Oh no, you'll have to pay royalties to Paramount Studios. They still are collecting on, Well, also is another, now they filmed it up here at the beach out here at Hollywood by the Sea. And they built some little bungalows for the actors. But this is 1920. There was nothing out there, just essentially a road. That was it, and the sand dunes. But remarkably, they didn't select it. That wasn't the first movie made in that area. Another film called Bound for Morocco was made there 2 years earlier with Douglas Fairbanks. Now we don't know what it's about because the movie is lost. Only 10% of the silent films still exist. The other 90% have been destroyed or lost. They're gone forever. The film deteriorated. So we don't have this movie. But it was again about Douglas Fairbanks finding out an American woman is held in a Moroccan harem. He goes in and rescues her. It's really a chase movie where they gets her out of the harem, then they're chased on horseback, on motorcycles, on speedboats, what have you, and finally they manage to escape the bad guys. This movie was made there, and I think because of that movie, they decided, oh, she filmed in Morocco, well, in Morocco, right? Hey, we know where we can go. That movie actually defined the Sheik. Now, are there copies of the Sheik around? You bet there are. All the really profitable ones, as still being shown, are still being in existence, a good one. So they think the best. And looking at some of the bad silent movies, maybe not bad. That brings in another relative of mine. His name was Mac Sennett. Now the spelling is different, but we both came from the same village in Canada, New Brunswick, Canada. Now, at that time, my name would have been spelled Sennett. But my illiterate ancestor, in a patriotic gesture, joined the Union Army during the Civil War. He didn't like slavery. He thought that was bad. Being Irish, they knew a little about slavery, and so they didn't like it. So they joined the Union Army, and he couldn't read or write. So the recruiting sergeant said, "What's your name?" He said, "Sennett." So he wrote it Sennate, phonetically, like Congress. That became his name. He went on to fight in the Civil War. So the name changed. Now the Canadian half kept the Sennett, and then our half went after the Civil War, where he survived some of the gnarliest fighting at the end of the war. He came to California, only got as far as Wyoming. But we kept that kind of the name. Now the Canadian side kept going, one of them ended up in New York, and finally Hollywood, where they made comedies. He discovered a quick thing. A, policemen are funny. You can poke fun at cops. So he invented the Keystone Cops, which always, by the way, unlike the common mythology, they always got their man. Usually by mistake, by accidentally running over him. But they did always get their man. And the other thing he discovered, sex. Sex sells. So he started the Mac Sennett Bathing Beauties. Who doesn't like to see sexy women in bathing suits? And of course, as the years progressed, the suits got smaller and smaller and smaller. And of course, the women did. And that was a great thing. But he quickly came upon a new formula. What he would do, he had a studio in Culver City, is he would find a movie that was a hit. Well, everyone was watching. Then he would go and watch it with his writers and write notes during the movie, Then they would take it to his studio, jump in some cars, and make a quick parody of it. See, in those days, they didn't have reruns. So that's what happened. You're a film owner of a theater, film theater. You show this movie. You've been showing it for months. The attendance starts to drop off. Even Valentino isn't pulling them in. So you know what you do? You look around for something to pair it with. And of course, Max Sennett made The Shriek of Araby. And for his star, he did a former circus clown, a cross-eyed comic called Ben Turpin, who actually had been like a carpenter. He fell off a ladder and his eyes permanently crossed. So he couldn't fix them, so he became a clown and did that. And later he really showed in the movies so they could do close-up of his crazy eyes. So they picked him to play the Valentino role. And they decided to make it cheap. They'd film it in Hollywood by the sea in an accident. So he quickly came up here. They had a shooting schedule of 5 days. That includes a writing. So they're writing it as they're making it. And he comes and he does this whole little bit. Now, one of the parts is he's trapped in the desert with looking for, again, his female counterpart and all that. And he's chased by a lion. But of course, not really able to afford a real lion. They simply got a big dog and put a mane and a tail on it. But you can still see it was a dog. And it would chase poor Ben Turpin around in the sand. Finally, it caught him and then licked him. And of course, it's funny, it's a comedy. So many people say the bit with the lion is one of the funniest scenes ever shot by Matt Sennett. So we got that. Now also, he went and rented the lagoon. So, okay, what about the trees? There's no palm trees here. Oh, well, we had to make them. So we went to the prop department to rent the palm trees, and they wanted too much money for them. So we only rented 3. And it's kind of a joke. There's these 3 dorky looking, maybe he made them himself, I don't know. They look really stupid. They're certainly fake. And in one area, Ben Turpin hides behind a palm tree. Really rather funny. Oh, by the way, what happened to the palm trees? Well, at the fame of the movie The Sheik, the Coconut Grove down in Hollywood decided to remodel their dance floor. And so what did they do? They bought all of the old palm trees and put them all through the dance area, to the restaurant, so it could be the proper Coconut Grove. And of course, who did they invite to the opening? Rudolph Valentino, who did the first tango there. I'm sure they paid it for that little bit. So they made The Shriek of Araby was an instant hit. By the way, it's still around too. Why? Movie theaters would show The Sheik, then they would show the parody next to it. So everyone wanted to see the parody, so they'd see the first one. Now, if you just watch The Shriek of Araby, which was based on a popular song called The Sheik of Araby, if you just look at it, it doesn't look very funny. What you've got to do is it's filled with inside jokes. If you look at the sheik itself and then see this, you get all the jokes and all the stupid plays on words are actually mixed up with the original film. So, and Matt Sennett made a lot of money on that parody as well. That wasn't the only one that went through. The popularity of the Sheik hit right in the 20s, right when a whole new generation was coming up. Young people who now drank illegal booze out of hip flask and drove Model T Fords around and such. I can tell you stories of my father who was in that generation. All the wild stuff they did. Did they have a good time in the 1920s? Yep. Did it roar? Yep. And they threw parties like you wouldn't imagine. Well, the young men started to call themselves sheiks. Okay. Now there was another movie made, again, here in Oxford, it had a great deal of impact on the social society. That was a film called The Queen of Sheba. Now, Queen of Sheba was designed as a movie for Theda Bara, the silent vamp. Now, the silent vamp, if you ever watch any of her movies, most of them are gone, thankfully, probably. She's not a very good actress, but she has one redeeming quality. She was not afraid to take off her clothes. And the movies, there's no 80s groove or anything like this. They show her wearing, you can still see some stills, very scandalous attire for its day. Actually, some of it's still pretty scandalous, actually. Well, she decided to leave the movies and marry a rich guy, and so she left it. So the movie they were going to star her in wasn't going to be made. But they'd spent all the money on costumes and sets and everything. They quickly looked around to find a substitute for Theda Bara. They found one, Betty Blythe. Ever hear of her? English woman. She starred in a movie called She, based on H. Rider Haggard's classic science fiction novel of She Who Must Be Obeyed, living in this sort of Ophirian city in the midst of darkest Africa. But she had, like the other star, she knew the best way to get ahead was to take your clothes off. And in the English film, she's literally topless. She's running around, no top on. That doesn't seem to bother her a bit. So I figured she'll do for Queen of Sheba. By the way, they had to shoot 2 movies when they did it. The one for the European audience, where she's literally almost naked. She's wearing a little jewelry or something, but that's about it. And then they had to do another version where she's wearing a few garments. That's for the American audience. And most of it was filmed in Hollywood, on a soundstage, but there are lots of the movie that were shot in the deserts, supposedly Israel, which of course they used for that scene over here in Oxnard. Well, the movie is lost. All we have left is 17 seconds. Someone saved 17 seconds of that film running around in the desert. They thought it was Theda Bara, why they saved the footage. But I only wish we had a copy. Now the stills, because whenever they make a movie, then as now, they have a cameraman take pictures of black and white shots. And this is done for a variety of reasons. One, publicity. Another one's just to remember costuming and the sets and everything. They do a lot of shooting. So you don't want to have, you've seen them make errors in a movie. They go into a room and there's something in the background here, and you go back and something has disappeared. They're always taking pictures to ensure consistencies. We have a few of those pictures. We even have some of her costumes, or lack of same. But Betty Blythe is kind of a forgotten star. But it was part of it was filmed right over here. Now, also, that area was used in a very classic film directed by King Vidor called The Crowd, made at the end of the 20s. It's really depressing. It's about a guy who marries a girl, gets caught in a dead-end job, they have a baby, and he tries, it just goes from bad to worse. It's all shot in New York. But they had a problem. Part of the scene where he actually confesses his love and asks his girlfriend to marry him, which, by the way, starts the end of his shining career at that point in time. That tells you a lot about King Vidor, I suppose. And they tried to shoot it at Coney Island, which is where it's supposed to be. They couldn't. Every time they started to shoot, all these people would come, wreck the shot. So that one scene they shot in Oxnard at the beach here, because there's nobody around. They went up, they came up from Hollywood, shot that scene, and they went back. Silent film, cut it all together. It actually was well received. Everyone liked this kind of new, edgy cinema that showed real life, gritty. And so that was partly made here, the Crowd. And that's just a few little scenes shot there. A lot of times that's what they do even today. They shoot a few little scenes for a movie in this area, then the rest is shot in a variety of other locations. Next film they shot was Omar the Tent Maker, also lost. But this starred a British actor named Boris Karloff as the lead character, Omar the Tent Maker. And as again an Arabian Nights kind of story that takes place there. I wish I could find a copy of it, wouldn't that be great? But the good news is, little by little, we're actually finding some of these films. Many of them come from Eastern Europe, where communists would steal films to show, but not pay the copyright on them, and would hold on to them. But now, with the death of communism, these films are coming to light. So over and over again, we're actually discovering films we thought were totally lost. Now, what happened after that? Well, I could give you a little bit of a problem. Valentino, his wife, he finally catches her in bed with another man, his lawyer, in Santa Barbara. He actually chased her up to Santa Barbara, and he actually tried to get a gun and shoot his wife. But then, not having the courage to do that, he tried to shoot himself. And of course, his friend took the gun away from him. And he went on a new spree. And that is essentially, if she could have a relationship, he would too. So he went about having sexual relationships with, as near as I can figure, about 28 women. Usually the cream of the Hollywood crop. Now, fortunately, many of these women lived to an old age, and when they wrote their biographies, when they were 80 or 90, they always included Valentino's tricks that they had with them. Now, a lot of people said, well, Valentino was gay. Well, I don't think he was. Too many women, too much out there. Bisexual, maybe. Gay, probably not. Also, if you read their different accounts, they all have a strange unanimity. It was kind of like Valentino's way to seduce women. Okay, you want to know what that way was? If you let men like to seduce their wives or something? First, he would always give them a cute nickname. Never referred to them by their real name. He always called them his little cabbage or his little flower, usually in French. Then, the second thing he would do was the flower trick. He'd find out when they were alone, come to their house with a dozen roses, or 2 dozen, and knock on the door, and they would answer it. Oh, roses are for me, but he wouldn't give them to her. He would take the roses to their bedroom, and then rip all the petals off of every flower and throw them onto the bed. Then he would undress the woman and himself and throw her on the bed with the rose petals, and there make love to her amidst the smelly petals. Of course, they're both covered with their sweaty bodies and roses. Now, this is an experience that none of these women forgot and wrote about it when they were elderly women. It was a kind of a unique thing. Because it always rang the same, I get the suspicion this is probably something he really did. He also had a nice yacht, and he used to take his girlfriends on the yacht to sail around Catalina. Of course, he didn't pilot them, though. He had a guy he hired to do that. And he had a lot of stories to tell, because he could listen in below what was going on in the cabin below in the powerboat. So a lot of different things. Finally, though, something happened. His wife couldn't put up with it after she had been unfaithful to him. She divorced him. Even though they stayed married for a long time, again, she liked the money more than she liked him. So she finally took off for Europe. He tried to win her back, but she wouldn't come. He wasn't really caring for the war. Maybe he was sick, I don't know. But he came back and started to carry on with another movie star, a Polish woman named Pola Negri, who was a great dancer. And they were having a little affair at at that point in time. We don't know how it was, but he decided to make a sequel to The Sheik called The Son of the Sheik. This is old Hollywood. Hollywood doesn't change. You make a really good movie that makes a lot of money. What do you want to do? Make another movie just like it to make some more money, right? And so we have Jaws 25, Star Wars 7, or something else, Star Wars 9 or 10. So you keep doing it until it eventually beat the dead horse to death, and then it all kind of imploded. They made this movie. He hadn't touched the Sheik role. He played both himself as the son of the Sheik and his own father. And he got Agnes Ayres to come out of retirement to reprise her role. And they had a young woman to play the young Sheik's girlfriend. And this actually was filmed not around here though. It's set to have a big budget. It was filmed in Yuma, Arizona. In fact, he almost died in the filming of the piece. He got caught in a sandstorm. This big sandstorm going on in the desert outside of Yuma. What did the director say? Good, let's all go out. Everyone, get your costumes on, let's go out.
Yeah.
So he gets lost in the sandstorm and gets bucked off his horse. Fortunately, the horse stayed with him. They were able to find him, but it's just the silent movie making, which was a pretty dangerous profession back in those days. And a lot of extras died in the filming of many of these films. What did they do? Hire more extras, that's all. They give maybe $50 bonus for the funeral. They're pretty callous, they're interested just in making films and making money. So they did this movie, The Son of the Sheik. It's a better movie than the original. It's a better budget, better acting. The actor does a pretty good job acting in it. He isn't more so flamboyant as most silent films were. It's very subtle, and it did work very well. Many said this would restart his career. Well, something happened while he was with the movie opening it in New York. No one knows what happened. No one knows what he was doing the night he was stricken. Some say he was at home in bed. Others say he went to a party. Most people think he went to the party. Others say he went to speakeasies. Wherever it was, he got him some bad booze, and it wrecked up his stomach. And he lingered and finally died. And when he died, the whole country went into mourning. They had a huge funeral for him. 5 women actually killed themselves because he was no longer around. So it was Natasha Rambova. She stayed in Europe mourning. And Polanegri actually heard of his death and fainted on the set of a movie she was making. She continued to faint several times over, getting PR all that time. Finally, they buried him in Hollywood in a great ceremony with biplanes flying over, dropping rose petals. I guess fitting, this rose thing. And they buried him in a gift tomb that was owned by Mathis, the lady who got him the first big job in the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse. So he's had kind of a given grave, but everyone really liked. So what did Paramount do? Re-released the Sheik. The original Sheik made more money, and of course the new one. Now you can see him back to back. Hey, even better, right? And so even though he's dead, he's still making money for Paramount.
What year was that?
And so, what about down here?
Richard.
Well, success.
What year was it? 1926.
What?
What year was that?
1926. I think it was August the 23rd, 1926. He died. The whole country went nuts over it. And what about that movie, the Queen of Sheba? Was it popular? You bet. Who liked to see it? Young men. Kind of like really neat. The girls would go see the Sheik, men would go see the Queen of Sheba. So what did the young men call their girlfriends? Shebas. They were called the Sheiks. So it was Sheiks and Shebas. That was nationwide. and popularized at that time. In fact, even to this day, if you go to Hollywood High School, the name of their football team is the Sheets. Even today, even though it should be politically incorrect today, culturally inappropriate, but still, that was what was done there. So that was what happened. But 1927, something new was hitting the film industry. Something that would change it forever. Radio. Now, have they invented talking movies before? Yeah, 1922. They could have been making all these silent movies with talking in them. But it was too expensive to cut down the margin of money. They just didn't do it. So consequently, they actually had one theater in New York where they did talking movies. You could go. It didn't cost you, you bet. And what did they have? Essentially, there were music videos of popular bands, and Broadway comedians, little short skits, 20-minute skits, so there was all that going on there. But that was talking. Then Warner Brothers was losing money big time, decided they'd make a sound movie. And they hired the biggest, baddest singing sensation of the day, Al Jolson. And his songs, which were on the radio, would be highlighted in the movie. See, radio you could get for nothing. You just take it home and turn it on. Of course, you have to suffer through commercials, but you could get all of that free entertainment. Then they also in the 20s invented something even better. Buying on time. Before that, all you could do was like a mortgage for your house. But companies said, oh, you want radio? Well, listen to Rudy Valley on radio. Hey, put down $5. Even though the radio is $100, you can pay $1 a week. Of course, if you didn't pay, they'd come and repossess it. But now everyone could get a radio. So people stopped going to the movies. 1/4 of all the American people used to go to the movies once a week. 25%. They stopped coming. The theaters were empty. Everyone was at home listening to the radio. So, here's something. Warner Brothers made a first talking film, The Jazz Singer, which if you ever watched it, it's available. It's a silent film. They have little title cards. In fact, he only speaks one line. And by the way, he ad-libbed it. After giving a song, Mammy, I think it was, he ends at the end of the song, he said, "You ain't heard nothing yet." That's the only line in the movie that's spoken. And people loved it, and they knew right then and there, old Hollywood was gone. All these silent actors who couldn't do voice were wiped out. Many had thick accents, could not change. And so consequently, it wiped out. But it also wrecked on-location shooting, because we had to have gigantic cameras, huge sound effects. In fact, the camera had to be housed in a soundproof box, which got to be 120 degrees for the four cameramen with a little window which you shot out of. And then all the mics were very poor. In fact, if you watch an early silent sound film, you'll notice the sound's awful. They used to have to get the mic really close. So they would hide a mic in someone's lapel. They would hide it in a bunch of flowers. So you'll see an early talking, "Hi, how are you today?" You know, they're talking to the microphone. And they really now wanted actors who could speak. See, a silent actor doesn't have to. Would Valentino have made it? Maybe not. But Broadway was filled with actors who really could act. So what did they do? Put them on the train, bring them to Hollywood, and they started a whole new group of actors. Now, some of these silent actors did make the transition, like Wallace Berry. He did very good. He made the transition from silence to talkies. Even Douglas Fairbanks made talking films, and even Mary Pickford would continue to make some talking films together. But that ended Hollywood by the Sea, because no longer could they take the crews out as easily as they had before. Well, consequently, real estate investors got involved. You can actually buy land where Valentino once won. Was it a great gimmick? You bet. It's kind of like the guys did in Lake Sherwood. And they set up Hollywood by the sea. In fact, even a few movie stars did move there. Not a whole lot, but a few. And they put in all these little houses. If you drive around that area, you'll notice all the names have Hollywood-style titles like Cienega, things like that would be reminiscent of the film capital. So it became a real hit. But do they make movies there anymore? I don't think so. But are movies still made in Oxnard? You bet. A lot of low-budget films like David Carradine took his profits from the TV show Kung Fu and made a movie called Death Race 2000, renting the old theatro on Oxnard Boulevard of the Spanish language thing. He rented that as a soundstage. Actually made some of the movie right there in that movie, a low-budget film. Actually, it's not a bad movie, really, for being what it is at that era. Other movies, such as Back to the Future, have been shot here, as well as a host of others. Fort Hueneme area has also been used in a lot of military films, including Pearl Harbor made-for-TV movie, where they actually used some of the moored ships to blow up as a kind of substitute for Pearl Harbor. Of course, unfortunately, most of the ships were used as targets. They had big round balls hoisted on their mast. You know what the ball means? They had no engines. They never bothered to cut them out. All the zeros are flying over the thing. The ships have no engines in them. But a lot of movies continue to be made there. What about Ventura? A couple of very famous movies were made there, including two that are now lost. One was called The Pride of Palomar, made by the Hearst Association. You want to talk about a group of racists? Boy, they were a pretty bad group. Who did they dislike?
You can bring them over when you come back.
And the bad guys in the movies were Japanese and Chinese. And it's about this young man who goes away to college, comes back and finds his father under the hypnotic spell of this Japanese overlord named Akuda, played by Warner Oland, who would later make a career out of Charlie Chan. Played all these angels, even though he was from Sweden. Which is kind of amazing, because when Charlie Chan movies were made, the Chinese in China really liked them. They thought they were good. So what did they do? They made their own Charlie Chan movies with a Chinese actor. But they made sure he acted like Warner Oland. So we have a Chinese actor trying to portray a Swedish guy playing a Chinese actor. But they made all these movies, which, by the way, were very popular in China, of all things. This is before the revolution, of course. So he played the bad guy, Akuda, and of course, finally, the ranch is going to be taken over by the Japanese, who plan to import thousands of Asians and take over the state of California. And of course, they have the whole ranch decides on a race, at which the racehorse of Pride of Palomar is the key figure. And it's a thrilling race, all shot at the Ventura Fairgrounds, which was designed as a racetrack, not for events, really, though they still use it for midget car races. But originally they had that. Well, the movie didn't succeed, and it's lost. They made another movie, which I hope we can find, because it starred Red Grange, the football player. The guy who was called the Galloping Ghost in the 20s. He started a little thing you may have heard of. It's in the news a lot these days. The NFL. His personality started it. But like all sports heroes, they put them in movies. And so he made a movie called 3 Minutes to Play, which he played a football hero. Made a lot of money for Paramount. They came back to it a couple of years later. Oh, let's make another one. 2 Minutes to Play, Part 2, the son of, or whatever. No, I play football all the time. I don't want to play any more football. I'll make a movie, I like making the money, no football. So, they said, okay, they wrote a new script, and it's about race cars. The 20s was filled with race cars. They loved race cars. And so they made this movie called Racing Romeo, where, of course, the football player played the Romeo and had a big car race. And during the shooting, they actually invited the people of Ventura to come to the fairgrounds for a free demonstration. It was all free. All the people came. While they're in that audience, they filmed them. They didn't pay them, but they filmed them. And Red Grange came out and kicked a football and all that. During the shooting of the movie, one of the 19-year-old kids driving a race car went out of control, smashed right through a fence, through the building, into the parking lot, and right into a brand new car owned by the Ventura County judge. Watching the movie. The studio did what they always do. The suitcases of money and a whole brand new car. You know, they put in front of a brand new car. Poor kid broke both of his arms. But in the greatest tradition of Hollywood, the film man at the camera on a big tower cranking the camera, the car goes out of control. It's coming straight for him. What does he do? He keeps filming until, of course, it rammed into the tower and knocked him over. But they use that footage in the movie. So nothing goes to waste. Anyway, Hollywood has a great history and impact on Ventura County and, of course, the whole of the state of California. And so it's our duty as Californians, as this is one of our major industry, to study that history and know its impact and how it will continue to impact future generations as long as films are projected on screens, shown on video screens or wherever they're done, because people love entertainment. And if they do, there'll always be somewhere a Hollywood. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Richard.
I hope that wasn't too long.
No. Thank you for just taking control. I like that. He just came in and started.
Professional.
Does anyone have any questions for Richard?
When's your next show?
What?
When's your next show?
When is my next show? That's an easy, that's a hard one. I'll be doing another talk here in October. This will be about the ghosts of Ventura County. And it's a different topic altogether. But I'll be doing that. I also do a series of tours to the city of Ventura, where I work and live. I worked there for 22 years, and I still live in Ventura. So they've asked me to do a few little talks for them and tours. So historical mostly, though some are both ways.
So how do we find those?
They're on the web. Just get the Recreation Department, City of Ventura. You do that, of course. Other places I'll be giving talks all over, including Ojai and all. Of course, because of my ghostly proclivities, I get a lot of business around October. It's kind of seasonal work, kind of like being Santa Claus in December. As soon as Halloween's over with, nobody wants ghosts anymore. Yes?
I just want to say, I believe also that Sylvester Stallone filmed in Ventura.
What was that again?
Sylvester Stallone filmed in Ventura. I don't know if that was called Starfish or...
Well, no, it wasn't Sylvester Stallone, it was John Travolta.
That's right.
He did a movie called Swordfish,
Yeah.
which 15 minutes of that film is actually shot in Ventura. He crashes a Humvee through a bank, which is still there. You can see it. A lot of other films been shot there, including The Babysitter and an awful B picture called Death Benefits, which is supposed to take place in San Diego. So they put a big sign on the city hall in Ventura saying San Diego Courthouse. And they shot right there.
I watched the filming of
What?
The Way We Were.
What parts of The Way We Were shot there?
Yeah, well, no. It was, the part I saw was in upstate New York on Union College. And I watched that. My little kids were little at that time, but we went and watched that.
A lot of movies were shot in Thousand Oaks, especially Jungle Land, if any of you remember Jungle Land. And my father worked there as a painter after he left the studios, and he did a lot of the art for them. And I, of course, wound up. So I got to meet Johnny Weissmuller and knew and saw a lot of the films being made very bad Tarzan movies and others were shot there. But they continue to make this part of what they make their money on, how to do that. I even got to be in a few movies. Worked on a project for Irwin Allen called The Big Circus, because I was a little kid. But my job was, my father had to paint the circus wagons. He gave me the job of the wheels.
Yeah.
That sounds like a fun job. It was 27 dang circus wagons. They all had 4 wheels.
Yep.
So pretty hard work. And I said, well, you know, I'm doing all this extra painting to my father. I said, it's really hot out here. He said, I'll fix that. Comes back, he gives me a hat. So all this extra work, do I get some money for it? And what was his answer? You're eating, aren't you? So I painted the wagon. So if you ever see that thing, those wagons, wheels, Okay. Thank you very much. All right, thank you for coming, and see you in the movie.
Are there any, just to let everybody know, Rich Rollins and Stephen Gama were here. They're gonna be running for city council, so.
Oh, we should stand up. Good luck. We want to have good civic representation of the people. And as I always say, democracy is an experimental thing. And it only works well if you take part in it. Just stay home and say, oh, somebody else will do it. Who will do it? People paid to do it. And they won't be speaking for you. They'll be paying for they'll be serving their masters and paying their bills. So do take part. That's how it was designed. That's how it works. It works best. Okay, that's my commercial. Well, thank you.
I wanted to tell you a funny story. Years ago, when I first moved up here, and I heard, "You're nice." And I went out to the front taxi.
Winds of War. Winds of War.
And I
With Robert Nachum.
went,